Hello, this is Gavin Palmer with Hero Looking for Group, talking to you about SARS-CoV-2 testing knowledge. So, people need to understand and agree with the goal of a system. So, why are we doing SARS-CoV-2 testing? And if people ignore the goal of a system, then the system is assuredly being wasteful and counterproductive. I just finished the book The Goal by Ellie Goldratt, and he defines science as a method for creating explanations. But he clearly distinguishes science from knowledge. Ellie Goldratt requires knowledge to be able to make our world better and life more fulfilling. And what I mean is, if this information, if this data isn't making, or if this explanation isn't making our world better and life more fulfilling, if it isn't allowing you to reach that goal, then it isn't knowledge. So what I've done and what Ellie Goldratt is doing is defining the terms around the goal. And the goal, like this would be the goal of the Holy Spirit, right? So your entire vocabulary, you would need new words, or you would need to redefine existing words if your goal is to make our world better and life more fulfilling. You can't just use the words that have been dictated by, the authorities. Okay, and this is key. So my wife shared this video from Chris Wark, and Facebook labeled it as false information, and they linked out to a response by Science Feedback, which states that there's a claim of WHO admits high cycle PCR tests produce COVID false positives is inaccurate. So Science Feedback said this claim is inaccurate. And I did my research, and I agree that Chris Wark made errors in his video. His video does have false information. I could go into those details, but I think those details are less important than the fact that Facebook and the article they linked to has false information as well, right? And this is very important. So here is, how you can get to it. I'll share all the links, but Chris Wark had a video, and you can go look at the experience. You can see the actual post. You can read it. There is false information in here. Get in touch with me if you want to talk about what Chris Wark said that is false. But the Facebook linked out to this, healthfeedback.org, which is linked to Science Feedback. And they are saying that this claim is inaccurate. So what they did is they found these different sources, excluding Chris Wark, but Chris Wark maybe got his information from some of these sources. But they just made an overarching reply that said that this claim, WHO admits high-profile PCR tests produce COVID false positives, is inaccurate. Now, the truth is that, from what I can tell, if you go look at the actual documents, like I actually dug into the memo. I dug into the memo that was the original memo that got updated, and I dug into the PDF that is linked. And I'll link to these things, and you can follow all of the links. But the WHO, the truth is that the WHO actually talks about false positives. So this is in disagreement with the WHO, and I'll tell you why it's in disagreement. And it comes down to the bottom here. So at the bottom it says, regardless of whether the test had a high or low cycle threshold value, a person is or has been infected if they test positive. So the words used by the WHO and Public Health Ontario disagree with this, and I'll tell you why. I'll try to explain why the words are in disagreement. And so this also means that it is correct to consider a person with a positive result and a high cycle threshold value as a COVID-19 case. So what happens is whenever you have a high CT, cycle threshold, it means they had to zoom in further. They had to amplify the signal further in order to detect the virus, because there was less virus in the sample. So what can happen is that you could have had the virus 3 months ago and you could test positive. And so that what they're saying in this Science Feedback article is that it is true that if you consider a person with a positive result and a high CT value as a COVID-19 case. So it's true, but it's misleading. So let me try to explain. So ignore the fact that they are using words that contradict the words of the WHO and Public Health Ontario. Just ignore that. And let's go to the true information. So Ellie Goldratt defines information as the answer to the question asked. Information cannot exist separate from a question. The people at Science Feedback are asking a different question than people like me. So I call myself a compassionate and reasonable person. Like I'm possessed by the Holy Spirit. I possess it. Every compassionate and reasonable person is asking the question, how do we stop the spread of SARS-CoV-2? Which is the underlying question is, how do we make sure that innocent people don't die? How do we reduce suffering, right? This is the kind of question a good person asks. But the scientists, quote unquote, at Science Feedback claim that there is no such thing as a false positive because the tests which detect SARS-CoV-2 indicate that the individual has had SARS-CoV-2 even if they had it months ago and are no longer contagious. So these scientists are using the test to answer the question, how's this person ever had SARS-CoV-2? They ignore the better question, the one that's with more compassion. The better question is, how do we stop the spread of SARS-CoV-2? So by approaching the testing with a different question and goal, because our goal and our question are related, these quote-unquote scientists are able to declare that their original claim is inaccurate. So all they did is they framed the question, they framed the information around a question that should have never been asked. And so they're able to say that the claim is inaccurate. And that's why the words used by the WHO and Public Health Ontario are in disagreement and contradict the words of Science Feedback, and also check factcheckers.org. These are, they are wrong, right? They are wrong when you actually ask the question that should be asked, which the WHO is asking and Public Health Ontario is asking, and every compassionate person who's trying to serve humanity asks. But these fact checkers, they have a different goal, right? Science Feedback is being misleading because they're framing the testing around the wrong goal. So the conclusion is that Facebook, this is why they tried to recruit me, and I actually responded and said I disagree with your banning and your fact checking. But my conclusion is that Facebook and Science Feedback have a goal which is to discredit certain sources of information. So their goal is not to try to eliminate suffering. This isn't their question and goal. Their goal is to discredit certain sources of information. So there's a typo. They ignore the underlying goal of stopping the spread. There's another They ignore the underlying goal of stopping the spread of SARS-CoV-2, and by ignoring the important goal and focusing on the less important goal, they are contributing to the confusion and a failure to use the SARS-CoV-2 testing technology effectively. So this is huge, right? The reason our sense-making system is failing, that's why there's so much confusion, is because there is an information war. So the information war has to do with the goal of discrediting certain sources of information. And so what happens is things like a good goal of trying to reduce suffering in the world get caught in the crossfire. That's my conclusion. That's my theory. So this is kind of a Hanlon's razor. Don't attribute to malice what can be attributed to stupidity. So the people like Facebook and Science Feedback, and maybe even the people behind those people, they have a goal. They're doing an information war because they want power. And then what gets caught in the crossfire is, problem solving and sense making related to, solving important problems. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. Please get in touch with me. I'll have links in the description. If you, I'm also willing to speak more in my Discord channel around, the errors that Chris Wark made. All right. Thank you for your time.